Kunja Vihara. Jayom Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Parivitakacharya Astatara Satsasi Simad. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Gaura Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So a little introduction to what we're doing here. This weekend, if I'm not mistaken, there's going to be a little celebration in honor of those devotees who have been spending time each week in reading groups, reading together Srimad Bhagavatam. So far, most of the groups have completed through Canto 2. We're beginning with Canto 3. So this is something of an overview, or it's being called the flow. Not details, because there isn't time. We're going to spend a little more than an hour covering what could easily take a month to go down into detail with the topics of Canto 3. So far, 4 classes prior to this, kind of introduction to the whole of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the first 3 chapters of Canto 1 Srimad Bhagavatam, that's one section. It's 6 questions and 6 answers in an exchange between sages who had assembled shortly after Krishna's departure from the world. Sages understood the new age is going to begin, and it's going to be very bad, so they wanted to do something. So they went to Naimisharanya to hold a big yagya for 1,000 years, one yagya after the next. And in their midst was one who had heard the entire Srimad Bhagavatam spoken by Shukadeva to Maharaja Parikshit. And his name was Sutta Goswami. So the sages requested Sutta, essentially, please tell us what you've understood and what you've realized from that discussion. And they highlighted 6 questions. And there was, in the first 3 chapters, those 6 questions, 6 answers. That was like our first class. And then the rest of Canto 1 goes from chapter 4 to the conclusion, chapter 19. And how did Bhagavatam manifest? What is the nature of the Bhagavatam? The nature of the Bhagavatam being the glorification of Krishna and his associates and his different incarnations and so on. And then the beginning of the Leela of Krishna Katha, or Hari Katha, begins with Ashvatthama trying to kill the last remaining descendant of the Pandava dynasty, that was the child in the womb of Uttara, Maharaja Parikshit. So he's sent to Brahmastra. Anyway, there's many things that happened. Krishna saved him. That comes later. And so Maharaja Parikshit was born. There's many things that are Queen Quinte's prayers, Bhishma Dev's instructions to Yudhisthira. All of that's in those chapters. Finally, Maharaja Parikshit is cursed by the son of a sage, that he would die in 7 days. He accepted. He could have done something, but he just accepted. Went to the bank of the Ganges, called all the sages together to be present for his passing, to create auspiciousness, and to answer some questions, like, what's my duty now that I know I'm about to die? And in their midst, they saw Shukadeva. And so they asked Shukadev to please address these questions. So there's two questions. This is where the second class ended. What's the duty of a person about to die? What is that subject matter that one should always hear, chant, and remember? That was the second class. The third class was the first 3 chapters of Canto 2. So class number 3. The first 3 chapters deal with meditation upon the universal form while chanting the glories of the Lord. Next, transitioning from universal form to the Lord of the heart while hearing and chanting the message of the Lord. And the third was devotional service itself. So that was the third class. And then the fourth class was the rest of second canto, which we'll take a look at in just a moment, where the second canto ends. So here's a little illustration of the 3 main sections in this Canto 3. You see Krishna Lila, creation, Varaha Rupa. So Varaha is in the center there. And there's the concluding chapters that we'll be discussing is about Lord Varaha's appearance and how that occurred. And it comes in the context of creation, so that's the middle petal that's there. And that middle petal has to do with a discussion between 2 great personalities. We'll hear as we go along. And then the beginning, it says Krishna Lila. That's Uddhava. You know who is Uddhava? Uddhava. Krishna had a father whose name was Vasudeva. Vasudeva had a sister whose name was Quinte. Quinte's sons were the Pandavas. So Arjuna was Krishna's dear friend and cousin. But Vasudeva also had a brother. More than one, but one of them was Devabhaga, who had a son whose name was Uddhava. So also, very dear friend of Krishna and great devotee of Krishna named Uddhava. Uddhava was the one that Krishna sent from Mathura with a message to go tell the gopis how he is feeling separation from them like they're feeling separation from him. That was Uddhava. That was Uddhava. So there's a discussion when Vidura is on pilgrimage and Vidura meets Uddhava and they have some discussions about Krishna. That's this first petal. We'll hear some detail. That's just in an image form. That's what we'll be discussing for the next while. Here's a transition from the end of Canto 2 to the beginning of Canto 3. So in Canto 2, there was a summary about the creation and annihilation of the universe. It's very technical. And at the end of that, we see in the image, that's in the white beard and hair, long hair, that's Shaunaka Rishi, very elderly. He was a sage, a disciple of Brihaspati. And he was asking the questions of Sutta. In this special position of Suttas, he heard Srimad Bhagavatam firsthand and understood it and realized it and can explain it. So Shaunaka asked, way back in Canto 1, Chapter 13, Canto 1, you mentioned that Vidura, after being insulted in the royal assembly, he left and went on pilgrimage. So where did he go? And you said that he had some samvada, a discussion with Maitreya. Must have been a really good one. Can you narrate that discussion, please? Those are the 2 questions. Where did he go? And something about the discussion between Maitreya and Vidura. That was from the end of Canto 2. So here's now the beginning of Canto 3, where King Parikshit, so King Parikshit is kneeling, wearing just a loincloth, and in the assembly there, you can see Narada holding a veena. Next to him is Vyasadeva, his disciple, and many other great sages. Somewhere in there is Sutta, because he narrates this later. So, seated, cross-legged up there on that special seat, Vyasa-san, that's Shukadeva. So, the king is asking Shukadeva, where and when did the meeting and discussion, that Samvada, take place between Saint Vidura and His Grace Maitreya Muni? Kindly oblige, my lord, and describe this to us. So Parikshit is asking on behalf of everybody assembled there, but he wants to know, same as what Shonaka wanted to know. So it's being repeated from Canto 2 at the end to Canto 3 at the beginning. Saint Vidura was a great and pure devotee of the Lord, and therefore his questions to His Grace Rishi Maitreya must have been very purposeful, on the highest level, and approved by learned circles. Like, I'm really eager, please narrate all this to us. That's how the Canto 3 begins. The stage is set, and Sukadeva Goswami starts to explain all this. He goes back in history to the abuse or the insult that occurred, that led to Vidura's going on pilgrimage. So in his description, Maharaja Parikshit narrates, Dhritarashtra was really bad. He tried in many ways to kill his fatherless nephews, multiple times. Dhritarashtra did not forbid disrobing of Draupadi. I mean, he couldn't see because he was blind, but he knew what was going on, and he didn't stop it. And he cheated Yudhisthira. Of course, it was Shakuni and Duryodhana, but he was part of it. He knew what was going on. And overall, the Kauravas, his sons, didn't take the words of the Lord very seriously, including himself, although he knew Krishna's exalted position. Now, in the back, if you look carefully, you can see the blind Dhritarashtra with a white beard up there, and his back is to the back of the royal throne, and so forth. So he was present and did nothing. Of course, others did nothing also, except Krishna. So Sukadeva says to Maharaja Parikshit, attached Dhritarashtra rejected the wise advice of Vidura to correct or reject Duryodhana. Right in this assembly, right after the disrobing of Draupadi, Vidura spoke up. And he directly said, this Duryodhana is a bad person, and king, you're my brother, you should do something. You should correct him or reject him. Now, Duryodhana heard the whole thing that he spoke. It was really strong. So Duryodhana, this is now third canto, detail, it's very similar to Mahabharata. Who asked Vidura to come here, this son of a kept mistress? He is so crooked that he spies in the interest of the enemy against those on whose support he has grown up. Toss him out of the palace immediately and leave him with only his breath. I just spoke, but he's the son of Dhritarashtra, who was, temporarily in charge, and Dhritarashtra said nothing. So Vidura said nothing also. He was insulted. So this is just a moment to pause and contemplate. What's the common response when someone is insulted like that? And recognizing his good intentions, consistently, everyone knew Vidura was wise, and everyone knew his intentions were for the well-being of Dharma and the well-being of the dynasty. Years of faithful service. Then, how did Vidura respond? We're going to see in the next slide. And the whole topic here is, what's the effect of Vidura's response? So, thus being pierced by arrows through his ears and afflicted to the core of his heart, Vidura placed his bow on the door and quit his brother's palace. Notice the bow on the door and the arrows. He was not sorry, for he considered the acts of the external energy to be supreme, meaning the will of providence is behind all this. Now, just a couple of comments. The fact that he left his bow was significant, because as he was being maintained by the Kauravas, he would have had some dharmic and social obligation to be supportive of them because they were maintaining him. That was one of the dharmic principles that Bhishma Dev followed. I was being maintained, so how can I turn against them? Although I know it's unrighteous. So Vidura was happy. He didn't have to make that decision. So leaving the bow was significant. And his leaving was not just, I'm insulted, I'm out of here. His leaving was, this is explained by our acharyas, he was service-minded. And he tried and he tried and he tried and he tried, and it looked like there's no service for me here. So I don't need to stay where there's no service for me. And so he left with that view in mind. And he could have gone directly to Krishna, but he felt, I'm so much contaminated by this unwholesome association, I need to go in pilgrimage to holy places and purify myself. That was his humility. That's how he was thinking. So off he went. And we heard in Canto 1, Chapter 13, he visited many holy places. So now we're hearing some of the details. 8 verses where there's details of where he traveled. He went alone, thinking only of Krishna, through various holy places like Ayodhya, Dwaraka, and Mathura. He traveled where the air, hill, orchard, river, and lake are all pure and sinless, and where the forms of the unlimited, Krishna, decorate the temples. Thus he performed the Pilgrim's Progress. Interesting, the Pilgrim's Progress. There's a book with that title, an English book. It's about a sadhu, a monk. So that's text 18. Then following 18, there's a number of verses where it describes where he went, who he spoke to. He didn't just go to places of pilgrimage. He heard from sadhus there. And then all the way to text 24, he reached the bank of the Jamuna, where he happened to meet Uddhava. Now, what was Uddhava doing in Vrindavan? Here's what Uddhava was doing in Vrindavan. After Krishna left Dwaraka, he was planning to leave. He went by the bank of the river Saraswati near Prabhas, and sitting under a young banyan tree, preparing to leave this world. And Uddhava, intuitively understanding Krishna is going to leave, he returned, because he was on his way to do what Krishna had said, to go to the associates of Narayan Rishi. And he doubled back and came back and went to Prabhas. And he heard from Krishna at a very timely moment. Maitreya, who you see in the background, Maitreya also appeared, so he was eavesdropping. He heard the whole conversation. Uddhava. Now, Uddhava's complexion is like Krishna's complexion. They're kind of like lookalikes. Not only their mood was so close, even their features were very close. And And after that discussion, which Maitreya heard, which is very important, Krishna sent Uddhava to go to Badrikashram with a message for the sages there, and then asked him to give his teachings. Basically said, I came in this world to give my association to my devotees. That's one place I didn't go, so as my representative, you go. And I have fulfilled my purpose. And then while he was en route to Badrinath, he was in Vrindavan. And that's where Uddhava and Vidura met, in Vrindavan. But Maitreya's image there is important. When Uddhava left, Krishna spoke to Maitreya at the same meeting place and said, very soon you're going to meet with Vidura, and I want you to instruct him as you've heard from me. Later, when that was told by Uddhava to Vidura, he was like, wow, the Lord thought of me just before leaving. But he also felt very sad because the Lord had departed from this world. So now the two are meeting. This is Vidura and Uddhava. And when you see Uddhava, who is Krishna's dearest companion outside of Vrindavan, what do you think? You think of Krishna, because of his intimate association with Krishna. So he started asking all these Krishna questions. How's Krishna? Because you've been with them, and Balaram, and Ugrasena, and Devaki, and Vasudeva, and naming, how is this one, how's that one, how's all the relatives? Because they're relatives, and very dear to one another. As he speaks to Uddhava about Krishna, Uddhava loses it. He goes into a deep trance, thinking of Krishna, and leaves external consciousness, and in his internal consciousness, he goes to Krishna. Then he struggles to regain external consciousness. Uddhava was unable to speak due to remembrance of Krishna. And then it describes about his childhood. Uddhava, in his childhood, was so absorbed in playing with Lord's dolls that he skipped breakfast. Even in his old age, his devotion didn't slacken. Those are the two again, Krishna and Uddhava, in Dwarka. Uddhava now manifests ecstatic symptoms. Only with great effort he came out of his meditation upon Krishna, because he wanted to respect Vidura's questions, because he's elder, and cultured people respect elder people. And so he responded finally, the Krishna sun has set. What can I speak of our welfare? No, Vidura happened to know already. It's a detail, but he had been on tour of visiting holy places, and one of the places he visited before Vrindavan was Prabhas, which is near Dwarka. And so he knew Krishna had departed, but still he asked all these Krishna questions, because he didn't want to say, hey, Uddhava, your beloved friend, Krishna, he's gone. He didn't want to say it. So he just asked, how is Krishna? So Uddhava he shows his profound attachment to Krishna, going into a profound state of meditation. Now he's going to begin speaking. And it's really nice, I think super nice. It's 2 chapters where he's retelling Krishna's pastimes. 10th canto is details and details, but these 2 chapters are summary. And it starts with pastimes in Vrindavan. Before he gets to the pastimes in Vrindavan, he glorifies the Lord's position and says that the fact that he acted as if he was ordinary gives me great pain, because worldly people don't understand. He's not ordinary, and they think he's ordinary. It's a whole long section, really beautiful. The Lord appeared in the mortal world by his internal potency, Yogamaya. He came in his eternal form, which is just suitable for his pastimes. These pastimes are wonderful for everyone, even those proud of their own opulence, including the Lord himself in the form as the Lord of Vaikuntha. Thus he, or Sri Krishna's transcendental body, is the ornament of all ornaments. I made that green up on top. Param Padam Bhushanam Bhushanangam. Param Padam Bhushanam Bhushanangam. He is the ornament of ornaments. Just nice Sanskrit. So after describing the pain that he was feeling, that by Krishna's doing, like for example, it gives me great pain that he said he left Mathura because he was afraid of Kamsa. So when he came back to see his mother and father, Vasudeva and Devaki, he said, that's so unfortunate. You couldn't take part with me in my childhood pastimes, but I couldn't help it. I was afraid of Kamsa. You're not afraid of Kamsa. So it pained Uddhava to hear people speak about this. They think he's ordinary. He's not ordinary. Anyway, there's many of those, his profound appreciation of the Lord's transcendental nature. He speaks many verses. This is just an artist's illustration of some of the pastimes of Krishna. The one in the upper left, that's Nanda Maharaj with his palms folded, being swallowed by a serpent. Krishna stepped on the head of the serpent like a boa constrictor type of serpent, and this celestial form came arising from the serpent's body, a Vidyadhara resident celestial form. Below that is Keshi, below that is Krishna leaving on Akura's chariot. Over in the bottom right is Akura's vision of Krishna in the river Jamuna, seeing the form of the universe with a Lord lying on Anantashesh, while Krishna is there with Arjuna on the chariot waiting for him. Excuse me, Balaram is with Krishna on the chariot waiting for him. Just above that is Akura meeting Krishna for the first time when he comes to Vrindavan. The upper right, in that painting on the left, that Shankachuta, he had a turban and a jewel on his turban. It's a long story. And so all of these are just old paintings. There's something in Hindi indicating which pastimes. This is an ISKCON artist depicting so many of the silhouette cameo little pictures of Krishna's pastimes. In the middle, running left to right, that's Govardhan Hill. The really busy place over on the right, that's Radhakund Shamakund, and many of Krishna's pastimes took place there. And so on. So he described Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. And most astonishing to him in Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan, this is a celebrated verse. It begins, Aho Baki Yam Sthana Kala Kutam. Baki is Bakasura. And the sister of Bakasura was Putana. And he says when Krishna killed Putana, he is so kind, he gave her the position of an assistant to Mother Yasoda in the eternal spiritual world, although she came to kill him by deadly poison to be sucked on her breast. But because she came as mother, he overlooked the murder intention of her and gave her a position in the spiritual world. Who is a better master than him? And he goes on describing all these Vrindavan pastimes. And then the next chapter, 3, it's outside of Vrindavan, starting, of course, with Mathura. Then Krishna goes to Dwarka. So in Mathura, over there on the right, that's Krishna finishing Kamsa. And as you know, what's on the left, that's the Kurukshetra battle. So he goes through sequentially. Now, just a little appreciation. Many of our acharyas have done the same thing, just as Vidura is doing in these chapters 2 and 3. Many of our acharyas have written little books, some really big books, describing Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan, Krishna's pastimes out of Vrindavan. And they're really nice because it's just Krishna Katha. So he set the standard, Uddhava, by describing these pastimes. Here's a nice illustration of Krishna embracing Maharaja Yudhisthira, because Maharaja Yudhisthira, in their family relation, was older than Krishna. So Krishna treated him with respect. He would come and touch the feet of Yudhisthira. Yudhisthira, being affectionate, would embrace Krishna. Now, Yudhisthira knew that Krishna was the personality of Godhead, but he had affection, like Arjuna did, affection of friendship. So that's what friends do. At least that's what Yudhisthira and Krishna did. And the image on the right is Balaram touching the feet of Quinte. So, Krishna's pastimes out of Vrindavan, that's chapter 3. And marriage to Rukmini, that painting on the left. And on the right, it's Krishna's wrestling with 7 bulls, because that was the requirement to defeat 7 bulls to get the 7 princesses of this king, pictured in the back. So Krishna won the hand of 7 princesses. And then the life in Dwarka, as you see in the upper right, that's Narada Muni. But we see Narada Muni over there on the upper left, because he was able to move around pretty freely. And he was astonished seeing the opulence of Krishna in Dwarka. There's Narada again in Dwarka with Krishna and Balaram and many of the other citizens in Dwarka. So in summary, now this is a quick summary of the first 3 chapters of Canto 3. Vidura leaves Hastinapur, meets with Uddhava. Uddhava describes Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. Uddhava then describes Krishna's pastimes outside Vrindavan. And the number 3 over there on the right side, there's Rukmini getting onto Krishna's chariot. So the kidnapping of Princess Rukmini and their marriage. And number 2, that's the Putana story. Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. So there's the first 3 chapters. This is just an overview. There's lots and lots and lots of nice verses just glorifying Krishna and his pastimes. Now we're ready for chapter 4. There's some instructions in the etiquette of seeking and giving knowledge. So we're going to spend some time with that. Vidura continues speaking to Uddhava. Kindly describe the self-knowledge. Read that verbatim what he says, but he's knowledge of the self. That's what he's asking. And Uddhava's response, he says, actually, very nearby here is Maitreya. He's much elder to me. You should ask questions like this of Maitreya, more appropriate. In the commentary, it says there's an offense, Maryada Vyatikrama, or it's the offense of surpassing or trying to surpass a greater personality. So when there's a greater personality present, It's polite, it's etiquette. You gesture to the greater personality or elder personality. Of course, they can send it back to you, but that's what Uddhava does. See, best you go ask these questions of Maitreya. He went that way. Because after they were together in Vrindavan, Uddhava stayed just a little bit longer. Maitreya went to some distant place, and Uddhava knew where he was, and he directed. This is an etiquette lesson about giving teachings. Here's a nice understanding about the mood of Uddhava and his qualification as a speaker. Although he referred Vidura to Maitreya, in a very deep and profound way, Uddhava was attached to Krishna, fully devoted and fully surrendered to Krishna. He had learned everything in disciplic succession, of course, largely from Krishna, but we'll see in a moment. He was a direct disciple of Brihaspati also. He was very learned, and he followed etiquette, not just in a formal way, but in a devotional way. Very special person, Uddhava. Very special. Very dear to Krishna and very qualified. So, following the recommendation of Uddhava, Vidura went in the direction that he was indicated, and he found Maitreya. So that's now we're at the beginning of chapter 5. And remember, we're going all the way to 19, so you have to have your seatbelt on. We're going to start moving more quickly. Here's a little chart that on the theme of the qualifications of speakers and receivers of knowledge. Vidura's questions are for the benefit of common people. He's a very, even in Hastinapur, he was understood as being very elevated, very learned, very wise. Vidura was like the wise person in the whole of Hastinapur. But here he is asking quite simple questions and even indirect questions. Here's a text from chapter 5. They have not satisfied me with the nectar of topics about Krishna. Who in human society can be satisfied without hearing sufficient talk of the Lord, whose lotus feet are the sum total of all pilgrimage, and who is worshipped by great sages and devotees? Such topics can cut off bondage to family affection simply by entering the holes of one's ears. So his eagerness for Krishna Katha was profound, and he wanted that all of the questions he was asking be answered in relation to Krishna. That's Vidura's quality, as elevated as he was already. And here's some of his questions, and they're in ascending order, starting with, how should one live for real happiness? Please give me instruction on the transcendental devotional service of the Lord. Narrate how the Lord accepts incarnations and creates the cosmic. That's a big topic. How does he create the cosmic manifestation? It was already discussed to some degree in Canto 2. And now we're going to hear in much more detail, kind of mind-boggling detail, in Canto 3. Narrate the characteristics of the Lord in his different incarnations. That was also discussed twice. Now it's coming up again. It's one of the essential questions covered in the whole of the Bhagavatam. How has Narayan created the nature's activities, forms, features, and names of the different living creatures, the species of life? How did he do it? It's not like he didn't understand information. He's looking for realization. He's looking for Shukadeva, for Maitreya's realization on these things. And covering everything, describe the essence of all topics of the Lord. So that's his questions, and the next canto and a half is a response to these questions. So it's an important chapter. His spirit, that's Vidura on the right there, the spirit of the one who's hearing. He has great respect for the teacher, Maitreya, and the process of hearing. His inquiry is filled with faith. There's a purpose behind each of his questions. He's thinking of benefiting others by these questions, not just himself. He's very, very eager, strong eagerness, and the nature of the questions are progressive, starting from something simple to something a little more esoteric. And his mood is seeking, pleasing inquiries, reveals doubts. He has doubts about things, and he's not too shy to ask. Now here's a comment from the acharyas that are discussing. Even though the circumstances which led to Vidura's pilgrimage were abusive, Vidura turned it into an experience which led him to absorption. That's the theme of today's discussion. His questions are for the eternal welfare of all living entities. That was also appreciated by Maitreya. And the rest of the whole third canto is just responding to Vidura's questions, because there's a lot of questions and there's a lot of subject matter to be covered. Now we're going to see something here. Before Maitreya came to the place where Krishna was speaking with Uddhava, he had already received lots of training. Here's his disciplic lineage. Lord Sankarshan, long, long ago, instructed the 4 Kumars headed by Sanat Kumar. In turn, Sanat Kumar instructed Sankyayana Muni. Sankyayana Muni in turn instructed Parashara Muni and Brihaspati. And Maitreya heard directly from Parashara Muni. So, in disciplic succession, he's already illuminated. Over there you see Brihaspati. I mentioned it, but Brihaspati was the spiritual master also of Uddhava. So Maitreya and Uddhava had a strong connection, but Maitreya was elder. So Uddhava referred Vidura to Maitreya out of respect for his age. Now Maitreya is going to speak because he's asked so many questions, so we're going to take a look at his qualification as a speaker. He was very learned, and he appreciates the nature of Vidura's questions, but he's also very honest. I'm only going to describe what I was able to assimilate. He's heard a lot, he's vastly learned, but I'm only going to speak from my realization. His speech was chaste, glorifying his spiritual master and glorifying Krishna. He's very enlivened to speak about Krishna. That's specifically mentioned later in the 7th chapter, because we're still on chapter 5, just meeting Maitreya in his beginning of speaking. And he's very careful about what he cites as authority. This is a good qualification. There's lots of people that write stuff. Somebody forwarded to me, somebody somewhere commented something on Ramayana, and I said, don't read those things. Read from our acharyas and don't read those things. Because anybody can say anything. Anyway, we should be careful. We cite bona fide authorities. So here's a nice artist illustration of these chapters that we're going to be discussing, at least up through 12. So we're going from the lower left, that's the 2 meet, that's Vidura and Maitreya. And then we're going to hear, anyway, we'll sequence. We'll go to the next chapter. Chapter 5, being asked, Maitreya explains the Lord's creation of the demigods, because it was like tell about creation. So there's the demigods, and then the basic ingredients of the universe. Now this is the sub-creation. We discussed this yesterday, and we'll say it again. There are these two terms in Sanskrit, sarga and visarga. Sarga means what the creation that the Lord does, and visarga is the creation that Brahma does. He's the secondary creator. He gets the ingredients, he gets the blueprint, he gets the Shakti, he gets self-realization. And then he went to school. He got his PhD in how to build the universe. And then he built the universe. He didn't create the materials, he received them from the Lord, along with the plan, the intelligence, the ability, everything. So this is now describing what Brahma does, because demigods are manifest, and there's the basic ingredients of the universe. It's very detailed, makes your mind spin kind of detail. And chapter 6, after the demigods were created, they were frustrated because they couldn't make the universe happen. So they, one by one, they offered prayers to the Supreme Lord, who obliged, and he entered within the elements, along with time. That's a very important Shakti. If you're going to have creation, you got to have time. Not just like, look at your watch and, okay, it's time for creation. It's an energy of the Lord that moves matter. So the Lord obliged the demigods. Creation wasn't happening. Although they were there, the ingredients were there, everything was ready, but nothing was happening. Their prayer, the Lord entered into the atoms, into the elements, along with time. And then arising from the elements came the universal form. Chapter 6. Chapter 7, and so after the universal form appeared, then what happened? What did Brahma do? Because the universal form is like a blueprint. And then Brahma has to make the universe according to the blueprint. He's like an engineer. He's got the blueprint from the Lord. So that's also very detailed and very technical. With the long beard, that's Maitreya. Much younger looking in this particular painting is Vidura, although Vidura was elderly also. Now the universal form has appeared, but Brahma is still pondering what to do, because he hasn't begun the assembly of everything. He has the blueprint, but he's not really clear. So he sat on the top of his lotus, he engaged in austerities. Now we read it for 100 of his years. And it was 100 of Brahma's years. This is bear with me, time is relative. Not only Einstein said, it's just time is relative. For example, the life duration of a germ or a small insect may be a few hours or a few days. And that's their lifetime. And in the earthly realm, let's say 100 years. But 100 years for us it's a fraction of that in the heavenly planets. And the heavenly planets is a fraction of what it is in Brahmaloka. Right? When King Kukudmi had a wonderful daughter named Revati, she was very special. So he went all the way to Brahmaloka and asked for Brahma to make an arrangement for her marriage. But when he went to see Brahma, he was engaged in hearing a concert by the Gandharvas. So he had to wait. And then when Brahma came and said, what can I do for you? Can you make an arrangement for the marriage of my daughter, Revati? And he laughed. He said, back in the earthly realm, do you know how many ages? I mean, everything, your kingdom is gone. Everybody that you knew is gone. When you go back, they're not even going to recognize you. But I have a suggestion. What's that? Balaram would be a very good, suitable husband for your daughter. So go back, and Balaram will accept her. So, time passing in Brahmaloka and time passing on the earthly planet are very different. Time is relative. So we read, and it's written in the Bhagavatam, that the tapa, as you see, the austerity of Brahma was for 1,000 celestial years. Now that's Canto 2. In Canto 3, Chapter 8, it says for 100 years of his years. So 100 of his years somehow equates to 1,000 celestial years. And there's a whole lot more on the earthly realm. Okay? That's a detail. Anyway, so he did tapa, and by the mercy of the Supreme Lord, he saw him. The Lord revealed his form to Brahma, lying on Anantashesha. Brahma offers prayers to Vishnu, reclining on the bed of Anantashesha, and he's praying to the Lord for the power to do this work for him. Now that happened in Canto 2, Chapter 9. Now it's happening again, Canto 3, Chapter 9. He can't do anything. He knows he can't do anything without blessings. And, how am I going to put a universe together? Gosh, I didn't finish my studies yet. And the Lord assures him, from your heart you'll come to know everything. Just remain devoted to me. Chapter 9. Now Chapter 10. Brahma could see that his lotus was spread throughout the universe. Thus he entered the lotus stem and created the 14 divisions of planetary systems as the residence of different types of beings. So there's no beings yet, but there's a place for them that he's creating. It's part of the Visarga or subcreation. Very detailed, very interesting. Something we won't see with our eyes. We'll have to see with our ears. So the universe is starting to take shape, inspired by the personality of Godhead and carried out by Brahma. Then Chapter 11, in order to have creation, you have to have time. Really far out chapter. Calculation of time by the atom. It's a very, very fascinating description where, just say two parts of it. One part of it is the smallest unit of time, according to Vedic calculation, is the amount of time it takes for the sun to cross one atom. Because the sun moves. And as the sun moves across one atom, that's the smallest unit of time. And so many of those makes another unit, and so many of those make another unit, and so many of those makes another unit. And then you get seconds and minutes and hours and et cetera, and then you get the duration of the life of Brahma. Calculation of time. And then there's eternal time, where there's no passage of time. It's a really far out chapter. Because you got to have time, you got to have creation, you got to have activity. To have karma or activity, you have to have time, past, present, future. So all of that is explained, very fascinating. Chapter 12, so Brahma's ready to, now that the planetary systems are constructed, he has to populate them, part of creation. So his firstborn sons, the 4 Kumaras, they said, no, Dad, we're not going to participate. We want to remain brahmachari. So he became angry, and from his brow, Lord Shiva appeared from the middle of his brow. And then some other things happened after that. There's the 4 Kumaras. And there's a question, why did the Kumaras refuse to take up service of producing progeny? That was a question. And the answer is given Vasudeva Parayana. They were so absorbed in Vasudeva, they didn't want any distractions. Brahma spoke to his sons, Kumaras, after generating them. My dear sons, he said, now generate progeny. But due to their being attached to Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they aimed at liberation, and therefore they expressed their unwillingness. And Brahma didn't like that. While Brahma was contemplating how to proceed, the first of the Manus, Swayambhuva Manu, appeared directly from his body. That was very helpful, because he wants to create praja. So Swayambhuva Manu and Shatarupa, in their mature adult form, boom, from the body of Brahma. Didn't take help from his wife, he's very powerful. They said yes, whereas the Kumaras said no. And so creation is going on, it's populating these planets, but there was a problem. What was the problem? The problem was the Earth fell out of its orbit and fell into the Garbhodak Ocean. What's the Garbhodak Ocean? The Garbhodak Ocean is half of the universe is filled with the water from the body of Garbhodaksha Vishnu. The other half is where the planets are, the 14 planetary systems. So the Earth fell out of its orbit. And chapter 13, when the Earth fell out of its orbit, Brahma was very concerned what to do. And as he was contemplating what to do, something very interesting happened. From his nostril, Varaha appeared, a little tiny boar, and then started expanding. And as he expanded and expanded and expanded, sages, enlivened by the Lord's roaring, offered prayers to Varaha as the object of Vedic sacrifice. So Varaha appeared, and there's many interesting paintings. This is at the bottom, that's the Garbhodak Ocean. You can know that because there's lotus flowers growing. Sometimes they show fish. And that's the fellow on the left, that's Hiranyaksha, the brother of Hiranyakashipu. And there's Varaha, who's picked up earth on his tusks. Now note carefully, each of these very ancient paintings do not show Bhugola, it's Bhumandala. It's not an earth, a round earth, as we know earth, but it's the Vedic conception of Bhumandala, the flat earth. Or, just see, they're all like that. There's Hiranyaksha at the bottom getting crushed, and there's Lord Varaha lifting the earth. Again, same. This is a Museum of Art in Cleveland. There's Bhumandala being lifted on the tusks of Varaha. There's another one in Pakistan. And Hiranyaksha's checking us out as we're checking out Lord Varaha, letting him have it. He's hitting him in the head with something. The British Museum, there's Lord Varaha and the beheaded Hiranyaksha. And the San Diego Museum of Art, again, it's not a round earth, it's a flat earth. These are very old paintings. And in France, there's Hiranyaksha being crushed by Lord Varaha, who has 4 arms and is using his weapons. So Vidura now asks how this happened. How did Hiranyaksha make his appearance? And Maitreya answers that it happened due to an inauspicious conception where Diti approached her husband Kashyapa at twilight and wanted sons because she was kind of envious. Aditi, her sister, had a number of sons. And Diti had not yet had any sons. So she was very enthusiastic to have sons. And she approached it at an unfortunate hour. So Kashyapa said, so be it. But the sons born of you will be demoniac. And sure enough, they were. So who were Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu before they were Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu? That story is told. The story of Jai and Vijay. You know the story? No? No? They're gatekeepers in Vaikuntha. In Vaikuntha, there's, like in temples in South India, there's 7 dwarams, 7 gates. It's representing the 7 gates of Vaikuntha. So to enter Vaikuntha, you have to pass through 7 gates. And Jai and Vijay were gatekeepers of Vaikuntha. And what happened is, the 4 Kumaras, after they said no to Brahma, we don't want to participate in becoming Prajapatis, they were mystically able to travel wherever they wanted. And one of the places they wanted is they just went to Vaikuntha. But when they tried to enter Vaikuntha, they were very attracted, but the gatekeepers didn't let them in. So, you little naked boys, you can't enter, because only great devotees. So there's some description when they came to the vicinity of Vaikuntha. Here's what the Bhagavatam says. It's a little bit of a large description. When the king of bees hums in high pitch, singing the glories of the Lord, there is a temporary lull in the noise of the pigeon, cuckoo, and crane, the chakravakra, swan, and parrot, the partridge, and the peacock. Such transcendental birds stop their own singing simply to hear the glories of the Lord. Although flowering plants like the mandara, kunda, kurabaka, utpala, champaka, arna, punaga, I don't know what any of these are, naga keshara, bakula, lily, and parijata are full of transcendental fragrance. They're still conscious of the austerities performed by Tulsi, for Tulsi is given special preference by the Lord, who garlands himself with Tulsi leaves. This is just some of the 20-some verses that are describing what's the kingdom of God like. Have you ever wondered what the kingdom of God is like? I have this little story. Once upon a time, I was young. And I asked Mom and Dad, what's it like? What's like the travel advertisement for heaven? What's it like there, so I should want to go there? Because it says we should want to go there, but what's it like? What do people do? What do they look like? And I just got a pat on the head. And I went to the priest. The priest couldn't answer my question, and so I stopped asking. At least outwardly. I got busy with academics like many young people do, and later on I came across the Bhagavatam. It gives the description of the kingdom of God. So if you ever want to know what the kingdom of God is like, read 3rd Canto, chapter 15, Bhagavatam. It's the title of the chapter, Description of the Kingdom of God, right there. So they got to the gates of Vaikuntha, and how'd they become very attracted? Because they're neutral. They have Brahman realization, but they don't have yet attraction for Lord Narayan. So how'd they become attracted to Lord Narayan? The answer is given. They're checking out his lotus feet, which are anointed with tulsi leaves, and they're little boys. They're just like really affectionate, and he's very affectionate to them. Here's the answer. When the breeze carrying the aroma of tulsi leaves from the toes of the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead enter the nostrils of those sages, they experience a change, both in body and in mind, even though they were attached to the impersonal Brahman understanding. And here's some other architectural structures where the 4 Kumaras are meeting Narayana. And now we're ready for chapter 16. Only 4 more chapters. So there they are. And the gatekeepers, Jai and Vijay, are preventing them from entering. So Sanat Kumar steps forward and curses them. You don't even know who's qualified, not qualified. You're not fit to be Ian Vaikuntha. You should go to the material world. And we'll give you an option. You can take 3 births as demons or 4 births as devotees, but you can't stay here. So they chose 3 births as demons. The first of them being Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. So Jai and Vijay, you see they're 4-armed. They look like Narayana, but they're servants of Narayana. They're gatekeepers. The Kumaras were offended. Jai and Vijay were cursed. The Lord of Vaikuntha understood there's this commotion at the 7th gate, so he came out immediately, and he pacified the Kumaras. Many nice things were said. And then both the Kumaras and Jai and Vijay offered very beautiful prayers to the Lord. And sure enough, they then descended to the material world. Another painting, Jai and Vijay, the gatekeepers, preventing the 4 Kumaras from entering. And they're scolding him. So now the last 17, 18, and 19 chapters, it's again giving details. There's Lord Varaha again on the left. He's standing on top of the body of Hiranyaksha. He's holding up the Bhu Mandala on his tusk. This is from the Dublin Museum. And he's reinstating Earth back in the Earth's position. So here's a little summary of the form of Lord Varaha you see in the center. This is these chapters. Maitreya describes how Lord Brahma was stumped in his creation because the earth had fallen into the nether regions, down to the bottom of the universe. And Lord Varaha rescued the earth and killed Hiranyaksha. Then Maitreya also describes the history of the births of Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. And we're almost done. So then Swayambhuva Manu and Shatarupa, they continue populating the universe and the earthly realm. You know Ayodhya, right? You all know Ayodhya. Who built the city of Ayodhya? Vishwakarma. And who did he do it on behalf of? The Sun Dynasty, right? Mm. So the Sun Dynasty is something that is coming from Swayambhuva Manu. I mean, it's tracing, they're all projects come back to Swayambhuva Manu. So all these narrations and more to come are because of the purposeful inquiries of Vidura. So all of this, what we just heard, is the response from Maitreya to Vidura about some questions about all these things. And it's said, you know, that just by hearing these things, one can become free from material existence. The affinity for the temporary had become attached to the Supreme Lord. The abuse that happened to Vidura, it led to his absorption in the Supreme Lord. And that's the Lord is attractive to everyone, who is the unlimited shelter of everyone. So that's the discussion for this morning. And we went for more than an hour. And you've been very patient. How about you two boys? Are you still with us? Yeah? Are you familiar with most of these stories? Or yes. Anything was new for you? No. You heard it before. Okay. Okay. So there's a little summary. And again, all of this is to help us appreciate and what the Bhagavatam is, and to encourage those who are part of the Bhagavatam reading groups to continue, and those that are not yet part of the Bhagavatam reading groups to join the Bhagavatam reading groups, because it's all auspicious. It's said that the Bhagavatam is non-different than Krishna. One of the questions that came in the very first class, one of the questions of the sages was, Canto 1, Chapter 1. Now that Krishna has departed, when Krishna was present, religious principles were protected. Krishna has departed. How are religious principles going to be protected now? And the answer is by Srimad Bhagavatam. Because just as Krishna was giving light by his presence, now the darkness of the age of Kali has come. But shortly after Krishna's departure, the brilliant as the sun Srimad Bhagavatam has risen. Because it's not different than the Bhagavatam. It is said in many places, not just in the Bhagavatam, in the Padma Purana, in many places. The Bhagavatam, the form of the Lord, literary form of the Lord, is Srimad Bhagavatam. Just like the deity form is not different than Krishna, the literary form is not different than Krishna. So one can drink through the ear the nectar of Krishna and have the heart purified, cleansed by that sound vibration. So persons that are engaged in this Bhagavatam reading groups, they're drinking nectar through their ear. It's a different kind of nectar than the one that goes in the mouth, goes in the ear. And it purifies the heart. And it awakens a loving attraction for the personality of God, for the source of everyone and everything. So, let's see if there's some discussion, comments, or questions, or...
I only want to say something.
Yeah.
These sessions are really helpful because when we are reading through, we are getting lost in the flow and some of the details, but this is really bringing a lot of satisfaction and attraction to dedicate more attention, absorption, Bhagavatam reading.
Well, a comment to you. Look at all this technology that you have in front of you, and when I look at this thing, it's like, and for you, it's like what all the technology is. And for most of the rest of us, I mean, some people can take a look at what you're doing and pick up on it, but I can't. So the Bhagavatam it's not technology, but it's a spiritual science, and it takes a while to learn science and spiritual science as well. And as one becomes more familiar with it, it's like, oh, okay. And before that, it's like, what? Can you do that one again? But this subject matter is not just technology. It's spiritually awakening sound vibration. That's the subjective experience, and aside from becoming familiar with how this fits together with that, and this personality and that personality, and the flow, as it's being said here, it's the experience of feeling a connection. It's that kind of literature. You feel the connection by going through the hearing process, cleansing and connection. It's a fact. Subjectively, that's a fact. Yeah, something over here.
yes, I do agree that we need to clean our mind to really get into something, to absorb more energy and everything.
Naturally.
But so many things going around, even we try to detach or try to purify mind with all the negativity goes around or within myself. I can blame others that because of them the negativity isn't. I'm a negative person, but so this detachment process, being so positive in each and everything, it will just last for a couple of minutes, couple of hours, but then bombarded with
business
so
as
many
usual.
thoughts and
Right.
everything, then I'm like, okay, you know what? Every good thing is good, but right now I have to deal with it. So that thing which I cannot avoid, so how I can be like being a so pure soul so that I can be totally submerged into this nectar, because
Okay, I got it,
those
I got it.
those things are like keeping me or blocking me in my second by second.
Welcome to the club.
So like Vidur, when he got insulted, humiliated, he just like, okay,
He
seems
just
like
moved on.
I'm done.
And so, but no, it's not like that. He was let me respond. He was attached to Krishna, and Krishna was attached to him. When Krishna went to Hastinapur to make the peace offer, where did he go? He went to Vidura's house. Vidura's house wasn't a palace. Vidura's house was very simple.
Yes.
But Duryodhana invited him, come to my palace and dine with me. Cordial, because they're cousins. And Krishna said, one eats for any one of two reasons. If you're hungry, you eat. I'm not hungry. Or you may eat out of love. But here in Hastinapur, there's no love. Your disdain for the Pandavas means disdain for me. There's no love. So I'm not going to your house. There's only one place in the whole of Hastinapur that's fit for me, and that's the home of Vidura. So Krishna was attached to Vidura, Vidura was attached to Krishna. So how did he pass through that insult? He was attached to Krishna. He wasn't attached. So he wasn't attached to the negativity that was thrown at him. Now he felt something. He wasn't like impervious. But that wasn't unhappiness as opposed to happiness. Oh, you flattered me, how nice. His attachment to Krishna wasn't created or destroyed by anything material. He was. So how do you get attached to Krishna like that? That's your question. So let me finish. There's two parts. There's cleansing. That's, the attachment to the temporary part. As long as you're attached to the temporary, it's going to keep swirling. Even if you go up, some time passes and you're back down again. It's like a Ferris wheel. And the circles can be, in time, they can be short, medium, or large. Go to the heavenly planets and exhaust your pious activities and back down again. And so the movements of time are cyclical. They can be small, medium, or large. But how to go beyond the influence of time as we know it, and the forces of the material energy as we know them. Is it possible? The answer is yes. And so how to is cleansing. Cheto darpana marjanam. The cleansing comes first. And then in that as one becomes cleansed and what's underneath the covering becomes awakened. That's the dormant attachment, affection and attachment for the Supreme Person. It awakens. It's there, but it's covered. And even when we go up, it's still covered. And then it gets more covered. So we have to go to the connected position. That's what yoga means, connection. So the yoga position of all yoga systems, this is now Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, of all yoga systems, the best is Bhakti Yoga. Read chapter 6, text, the last text of chapter 6, text 47. Of all systems of yoga, Bhakti is the best. And Bhakti has two parts. Really simple. What the mind does and what the body does. And so work your mind in such a way it goes to Krishna. Work your body in such a way it's serving Krishna. And the best means to get that rolling or get that moving forward is sound. That's the Vedic system. So keep yourself connected to sound. You have the best cleansing and the best attachment to Krishna. When you, as you progress, cleansed and attached, you can remain undisturbed even when there's disturbance. It's not like you don't know what's going on. You don't become dull. But you're not influenced this way or that way by the temporary. You can see it, but you don't identify with it. My experience, in response to your question, specific to hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, it's not changed the world around me, but it's changed how I experience the world around me. It's from the inside. The change is from the inside. And the inside becomes more aware and clear and clean, then your influence upon others becomes more of the same. And conversely, you just can commiserate with others that are going through the same Ferris wheel thing. And it doesn't stop. You hold hands because, like, you may want to vomit when it gets, like, the ride gets too bumpy. But there's a way to transcend it. That's the yoga system. The best of all the yoga systems, where the mind and the body are connected. It's very simple. So how does it start? So how does it start? This is the how-to question. Sadhu Sangha. Sadhu Sangha. Sangha means association. Sadhu means one who's attached to Sat. It's a sadhu. So by associating with those who are attached to the eternal, you become more attached to the eternal and similarly detached from the temporary.
Yes.
And a very wonderful instrument for that is sound vibration. The sound vibration of Srimad Bhagavatam. The proof of the pudding is in the tasting. I can have a nice advertisement. This is super pudding. And you taste it. Don't take my word for it. It's super pudding. You taste it. The proof of the pudding is in the tasting. That's a George Harrison statement. When he wrote the foreword to Krishna book, the proof of the pudding is in the tasting. So,
yeah, I actually got 3 points out of it, like keep the good satsang, like
sadhu sangha.
And sound therapy is really like when you, it helps. It's going to help.
Yeah.
And then definitely when all these positive vibes and vibrations are around, so it will cleanse your aura and the energy around you, and then everything positive. You will start looking everything in a positive way, so it will come. Thank you.
Sound is more effective than a material object. I'll give a little example. There's a Sanskrit word trataka. Trataka. It's nice because I like learning Sanskrit things. I don't know what it means. Then once I know what it means, then it means something. So trataka is a type of meditation where to keep the mind peaceful, you fix your eye on something. So one type of trataka is candle. Another type of trataka is a mandala, a geometric pattern. In Buddhism, they use it. They spend a whole day making a mandala on the ground. And then the monks lean over the mandala and they meditate on this part of the mandala. And they do that for a few hours, and then they shift to another part of the mandala. But in the end, it's the whole mandala. It's to make the mind peaceful and not caught up in the temporary. But what happens is, if it's just an object, after some time it gets start getting cluttered again. That was my experience as a college kid, learning, I didn't know what to call it, but learning Zen Buddhism. It has effect, but when you step back from it, the clutter starts again. I mean, same as you're saying. So I found that sound vibration, the clutter doesn't happen so quickly. The spirituality sustains because there's shelter. It's not just a physical material object, a candle or a something or a something. It's sound. And you connect the sound even with an object, like the words of the mantra. If your eyes are seeing the words, that's a type of trataka, meditation. But through sound, because it's sound that elevates, not the eyes, the sound cleanses the mind. Chaita Darpa Nimarjanam. So try it, along with whatever else you're doing that seems meaningful to you. Try this sound vibration approach. Mantra in Srimad Bhagavatam. See where the train goes. Get on board. Oh, okay. Okay. Okay.
Because hearing these sometimes, the surrounding chitter, oh, this happened.
Yeah.
Then, okay.
We're very familiar with prajalpa. Okay. Anyone else here? Okay. We have our little pandemic protocol here.
So, I would like to just continue on that one only.
Good.
The problem which I face a lot of time, because we are always working on the deadlines, no matter how much you are trying to ignore the insult which you could feel and you can think about it, that's an ego. But then when you are surrounded and every time it's happening, your ego starts to come up. That even though you feel that you have ignored the insult, like Vidur, we cannot walk out. Always the project deadlines and this.
So
and
he
that
did
is the-
service for a long time before he walked out.
Yep, but with all the commitments which we have in this material world, which is again the service to Krishna,
Yes.
how do you, especially I feel when the time is less, it becomes so difficult to ignore that insult and think it and take the humility or the high road and just be focused on the final goal.
Your question is similar to hers. The context is different, but the question is similar. And the answer is, say it negatively first. Without attachment to sat, you'll be moved by asat. Or say it positively. When you become attached to sat, you would say Krishna, the supreme person, then you're protected. You're protected. If you're not feeling protected, your mind's going to go somewhere. If you're feeling protected, you can smile. Now, it takes a while to get that feeling of connection, but when you're feeling connected, Prabhupada gives this example. It's really simple. Supposing there's a young boy and he's walking along the street holding the hand of his father, and along comes a big dog, woof, woof, woof. And the little boy looks at his father and smiles, because he's always been protected by his father. So he's not worried about the woof woof. And sure enough, his father will protect him. Now, let's go to Queen Quinte's prayers. And because I'm listening to them, Prabhupada's describing. They had difficulty, but they always felt protected, and they were protected. This calamity, that calamity, that calamity, this insult, that insult, this, So it's not that the world around you stops being the world around you, but the inside is protected because of that connection. Is there such a consciousness? Yes. Can I go there? Yes. How do I go there? Well, it takes wanting to go there, not just I don't like that negative stuff. That's not sustainable. What's sustainable? The sense of being connected, because with the sense of being connected, there has to be some detachment from stuff and how important you feel stuff is. It's not important. I mean, it's not that you don't recognize somebody's being insulting. It's not like your intelligence shuts off and you become a zombie. But you become a transcendentalist, where you see what it is. It's this mode of nature, that mode of nature, something else, something else. It's out there, and I have shelter. My consciousness is with Krishna, and he's my protector. You may choose to do things that are appropriate for what's out there. You don't become inert or somebody's punching bag or something like that. But you serve Krishna in an appropriate way, and Krishna will give the intelligence, as he did to Vidura. You've tried and tried and tried. It's, you need some other service, Vidura. Okay. I'll go get some other service. So he got some other service. He did a lot of good service. He came back, and after he did what he did, he delivered Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra gave up the insanity of, I'm the king. When his teeth were falling out and his liver wasn't working and he was about to keel over. Vidura was heavy, but he had his spiritual potency, so he was able to deliver his brother. Because if he hadn't delivered his brother, he would have died with a big pile of sin. It would have been bad news for Dhritarashtra in his next life. So he became freed from all that. He was just interested in his brother. He came all the way back to Hastinapur from Vrindavan. For what? To deliver his brother. He didn't need to do that. There was compassion in his heart. Although he knew all the bad stuff his brother had done. He knew it, in detail. So the heart becomes soft. And you stop worrying about yourself and your feelings, because you're fixed when you're protected. It's true. What do you think? Possible or not possible?
I think it will take it needs a lot of dedication and the faith. Faith is always there.
There's a reason to do it, because you don't like this other space.
I do like it. It's not that I know.
No, when people
things
are
cannot
insulting and
change
there's
around
pressure
me.
and there's this and that, it's not. We don't like it. We're not meant to like it. It's abnormal. It's a diseased condition of life. We like to be healthy.
Yeah.
So go to the healthy place.
Working on it. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Again, it comes back to that sangat. Wherever
the
is
process
your...
is simple.
Yep.
We're going to hear something anyways. Most people read something anyways. So hear and read and remember, that which is going to lift your consciousness to transcendence. It works. It's gradual.
Yep.
It's gradual because we're attached to the temporary. We don't like it, but we're attached to it. We don't mind the place, we just mind the misery. We don't like the suffering, but we're attached to the sources of our suffering.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you let go? And how do you stop the Ferris wheel? You have to take some decisions. at least, steps in the direction of, it's like Prabhupada's example. A physician comes to a good doctor. The doctor says, what's the problem? Let me feel your pulse. Are you feeling this? Are you feeling that? He gives his analysis, then his diagnosis. This is the situation, and you need this medicine and this diet. And you go, but doctor, I like those foods, the ones I'm not supposed to take. And I'm not sure I really want the ones that I'm supposed to take. Okay, continue with the disease. When you have a good doctor, they'll tell you. And then you just have to follow the prescription, if it's a good doctor. Good medicine, good diet, and whatever else. Don't eat these foods and eat more of those foods. Okay, you're going to eat something anyways.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Okay.
Is it because of everything, like, are we looking for appreciation in life, or like something, we want someone to love us because we are...
It's natural.
Yes, so isn't it like the source of misery or the suffering we have, or we are...
We're just,
going to
the object of attachment is misplaced. There's nothing unnatural or unwholesome about wanting to love and be loved. That propensity is, this is George Harrison in his introduction or foreword to Krishna book. People have misplaced that shelter, where to repose the shelter of being loved and loving. You place it on something that can't reciprocate and you're disappointed. It's still that, so it's still wanting. So then what's the solution? You don't trash people or, call them bad names or something. That's not the principal shelter. You have meaningful relationships with whoever is important to you, and make the primary shelter this loving relationship with the source of everything. And then the persons that are important to you, they're part of that source, part and parcel of the source. Then the full meaningfulness of those relationships becomes realized. No, that's nice sounding, then how do you get there? It's sadhusanga.
So it's like we have, with this world, we have a good shelter. We are good soul. Good people.
Good.
To provide everything what we have.
Good.
But in the but we are getting all the bad vibes, or say stones or whatever, to destroy the shelter. So how much you...
No, they can't. If you have genuine shelter, ahaituki pratyata yatma suprasidati. There's no material hetu, there's no material cause, and if there's no material cause, there's nothing material that can destroy it. Apratyata. Now, if something does destroy it, then it's not fully spiritual. It's good, but mixed with material. So how to get to the unmixed? Sadhusanga. Go for it. Give it a try. All right.
I feel is sometimes your goodness is considered to be your weakness.
That's materialists.
That's what
Let the materialists think like that.
I have experienced. I feel it that
Okay.
no matter
That's okay.
how
Let
much.
materialists think like that. They're going to be materialists. You're not going to change them by, giving them a bad name. So just, let them think like that. You do what you know.
Yeah, absolutely. You should not change your nature because of someone else's response.
So you take shelter, and if you become spiritually charged, then you can have a possible spiritual charging influence upon others that don't see that way. But, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And they'll continue to see that your good means you're weak. It's okay. It's It's okay.
Yeah, it takes time to come to that point. It's okay.
But if you don't have shelter, then you shift back the other way. But if you have shelter, you smile. Not only on the outside, you smile on the inside. Because you have shelter. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go to see if we have something online.
Snehavalli Mataji's question. Thank you for the beautiful narration. I would like to know what is Srimad Bhagavatam's understanding, whether it's the earth that fell into Garbhodak ocean or the Bhumandala that fell into the ocean.
A part of Bhumandala is Bhugola, or the earth globe. Now, depending upon, there's a nice devotee who is a PhD graduate from Stanford University that studied the universal form and Canto 5 for about 3 years before he gave a seminar on it. And I can send you the links if you want. And he claims that most of the modern paintings show the earth globe, but the older paintings show the earth Bhumandala. So he is of the opinion that Bhumandala, because it doesn't refer to Bhugola except rarely. So, this is Snehavalli, this is one of those things that to understand the universal form, and what is this Bhumandala anyways, because who's seen a Bhumandala? You haven't seen it. It's not, so what is it if you haven't seen it? You have to go by sound. And going by sound is flat, more or less. There's some mountains, but it's not round, it's flat. The topography is flat, not round. So, according to some who have studied the Bhagavatam, it was Bhumandala that fell, not just the earth globe. Now, it's not too consequential anyways, because Braha rescued it.
Kalpataru Mataji's question. The falling of the Bhumandala from its orbit, was it by Lord's will or did he arrange it?
He sanctioned that will.
Ankita Mataji's questions. Does Matsya avatar come after every partial destruction?
There's a partial destruction, partial devastation at the end of the change of every Manu. And so the answer to that question is no. It's not at the change of every Manu of the partial devastation.
And her second question is, how can we understand Lord Brahma's meditation as devotional service?
How can you not? It's just part of, because so like when you're chanting japa, that's a meditation. Is that devotional service? Because following that japa, or mantra meditation, comes many activities. But you're practicing fixing your mind, and then as you do many activities, you keep your mind fixed no matter what's swirling around you, because you fixed your mind. You have shelter.
Vinod Bihari Prabhu's question. When Brahma starts creating the universe after meditating on the universal form of Krishna, does the material universe start manifesting as Brahma thinks, or does he need to work?
He works.
And how long does Brahma take to create the universe?
I don't know. Long enough.
Then Raghunandan Prabhu's question. Can you please explain a little more about faithful inquiry? What does it mean, and how can one adopt this practice?
Well, faithful inquiry, here's what it does mean, and here's what it doesn't mean. What it doesn't mean is blind. I'm dull. Whatever you say, my head goes yes. That's not what faithful inquiry is. Faithful inquiry is, it's not challenging, and the essence behind the inquiry is I want to know. I know that I don't know, and I want to know. That's faithful inquiry. And when faithful inquiry is made to a place or person where there's actual pure sound vibration or proper knowledge, or say knowledge in disciplic succession, then something moves inside. That's the consequence of faithful inquiry. Something moves inside. Now the tendency is, like we've been discussing, even if something moves inside, let some time pass and I'm back to being bewildered again. Or, in the swirl of the material energy because stuff is moving around and I haven't really deeply allowed that sound vibration to enter. But then you continue faithful inquiry and until the understanding becomes fixed, irrevocable. Nashta prayeshu abhadreshu.
Radhika, this is Kirti Prabhu's 10-year-old daughter. Are there 14 planetary systems in every universe?
Yes.
Sanchari's question. When thinking of Revati and her father traveling to Brahmaloka, it seems unusual that they wouldn't know about the time disparity between the two worlds. Did they just forget, or did they know it, but because they were already there, out of respect for Brahma, they stayed?
He must have forgotten, because he wasn't a fool. If he's capable of going to Brahmaloka, he's not an ordinary fellow. So he must have forgotten.
This is from Sandhya Mataji. It's so wonderful hearing from you the chapter summaries, since our reading group is currently going through this section. Also, I was reminded of our visit to Revati Balaram temple during Dwaraka Yatra.
Yeah, I was remembering too. Okay. Yes. Amrita Kelly.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Thank you so much. It really connecting us to what we are reading, and I'm also appreciating what you mention every time. Repetition is good. So I'm really appreciating that, particularly the qualities of...
Can you turn the speaker towards me, the speaker? Because her voice is always really soft, and I have to strain to hear what she's saying.
Sorry. Yeah, particularly I'm appreciating the qualities of hearers and the one who is giving the knowledge. Guru Maharaj, one Mataji, she was not able to join because her son had fever after COVID second shot, but both of them are hearing the class. She has a comment, by listening to this class, I feel like the key to all the questions is in Bhagavatam. They just received Srimad Bhagavatam from you on Bhadra Purnima, and her 12-year-old son Dhruva has this question. He is studying Srimad Bhagavatam as part of the Sunday school. Why is Krishna the Supreme Lord when he is an incarnation of Vishnu? Shouldn't Vishnu be the Supreme?
In the Srimad Bhagavatam, I think it's 1:328, something like that. Dhruva can take a look and find out that although the list of incarnations, including Krishna and Balaram, are incarnations of Vishnu, it is said Krishna is the source of everyone, including Vishnu. So a very simple example that I like to give that really makes it easy. To enter this house, there's a front door. So we could say we entered the house to the front door. But did we exist before we entered the house? Yes, we existed before we entered the house. And Krishna existed before he appeared as an avatar of Vishnu. He has his own abode in Krishna Loka, and he appeared through the doorway as incarnation of, or an avatar of Vishnu. But he's the source of Vishnu and all the other avatars in the spiritual and the material realm, before they appeared and after they've appeared and while they're returned back. He is the source of all avatars and the source of everything else. So Krishna is the source of everything. You can read in Bhagavad Gita chapter 10, text 8, and you'll find Krishna is the source of everything, including all avatars. So why is it said that he's an avatar of Vishnu? Because he appeared as an avatar of Vishnu. He came through that doorway. But he has an existence in the spiritual world before he went through that doorway. Okay, you have something?
Yeah, going back to that the earth fell out of the orbit. So who put it back, Krishna or?
Well, the description goes like this. There were two brothers, Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. And they both have the first part, Hiranya, gold. And the younger brother wanted to assist the older brother. So he was gathering gold from parts of this earth realm to help build Lanka, make it, all gold. But he gathered the gold from so many different places. It is said that he built a tunnel through the other side of the earth planet. It was taking gold from the other side of the earth planet and bringing it back. The earth became unbalanced and fell out of orbit. So it was the doing of Hiranyaksha. Now, did Krishna sanction that? Everything, not a blade of grass moves, or not a Hiranyaksha move happens without the sanction. But then the Supreme Lord that sanctioned it, finished him. Because, it was a big disturbance for the whole universe. The earth fell out of its orbit. It was the result of the sinful activity of Hiranyaksha. And Krishna corrected it.
So it's good to know it's not only the ladies who love golds, there are guys who love gold too.
Yeah.
So my second question is, according to Vedic and all the pictures, that earth was a bhumandal, it was flat.
Now some people depict as Bhugola, that's also okay.
Mm-hmm. But, so, it's just the picturization, but earth is still round, because there have been so many theories.
The earth planet is round. And simultaneously, the earth planet that is round is situated as part of Bhumandala, which isn't round.
Okay.
Now, where is that place that we can't see that's not round, where the earth planet is situated in? It's part of the universal form, which is in a subtle dimension which we can't see. So it's not easy to understand what I just said. But there is a Bhumandala, and it's not round.
Mm-hmm.
It has mountains, and it has rivers, and it has oceans, it has trees, but it's not round. The earth planet is round. Bhumandala is flat.
Mm-hmm.
And the earth planet is part of Bhumandala. And there's more to be said. But it's, how do you put those two things together? We have experience of a round earth. We don't have experience of a Bhumandala. Where is that? We don't have experience of it. So you could be, not you, someone could say, rubbish. Show me. We don't have if we don't have the subtle capacity to see subtle things, you're not going to see it.
Because all the pictures from the satellite and everything, the earth is Almost round, not perfect,
Yeah,
but yes,
it's
it's
elliptical.
like, yeah, almost round.
Yeah, almost. Yeah.
In one of the questions or somewhere you mentioned about, which sounded like there are several universes, not just one.
That's essential. When Mahavishnu expands universes, there's so many, too many to count. I mean, that's the Vedic depiction. Mahavishnu is lying on the Karna ocean, and as he exhales, the universes, how many, too many to count, leave through the pores of his skin, and they expand, because he expands himself into each universe as Garbhodaksha Vishnu. And then when he inhales, it's a long breath. When he inhales, the universes and the time energy withdraws them all into their dormant state again. And then he exhales.
So should we consider this pandemic as one of the inhales he's doing where he's trying to take something out?
There's many things to say about what pandemic is. It's just janma, mrityu, jara, vyadi. There's disease. It's part of the system. It's the nature of the place. The pandemic is kind of like calamitous. It's affecting a lot of people, and it's like really bad. People that get it, even if they get cured, it's like the experience is horrific. And what speak of those that don't? So that's connected to, karma. Misdeeds, and then people get reactions for their misdeeds. And it's like, global. So, that's a whole topic. Earthquakes and, calamities that happen. Big scale, and lots of people, seemingly innocent people get damaged or destroyed. It's that, mrityu. It's just part of the place. Birth, death, disease, old age. So we kind of celebrate birth. We don't like death, but it's just part of the place. So is there an option to like the birth, death, old age, and disease? Yeah. Most people don't ask. But is there? Yeah. What's the solution? The solution is connect with that which is not temporary. You stay connected to the temporary, you're going to stay in the cycle of the temporary. Recycled goods. The souls don't go out of existence. They don't come into existence. Soul goes somewhere else. There's an option to not go into that cycle. That's Bhagavad Gita's message. It's real. Okay. Prabhupada ki jai.